Well, hi everyone. I'm Simone Boyce, and as Robin mentioned, I'm a journalist and a podcast host. And you know, we often are told that we can only be one thing, as Robin mentioned. But I know for a fact that all of us are in this room today because we are multidimensional. Mm-hmm. Your dimensions, your layers, your complexity brought you here into this space today, and we're here to celebrate that with you. I'm so excited to celebrate this with you. So Mandy, a few weeks ago, I gave her some homework.
Yes.
And I asked her to think about her life in chapters, almost like chapters of a book. Mm-hmm. And I asked her if she could think of a label that she would assign to each chapter. So we're going to be unpacking some of those today.
Yeah, I'm excited. It really got me thinking. I had to go deep into the recesses of my memory, and it really jogged a few things for me that I hadn't thought about in a long time.
You know what? It got me thinking too. And it's kind of a great exercise to do, to think about the labels that we've all been assigned either
or
by
we
ourselves.
Put on ourselves.
Exactly.
Perhaps.
Yeah. And think about the meaning behind them. So let's get started. So we're going to go all the way back to the beginning. Okay. You started off with the label determined.
Yes.
That's how you would describe yourself as a child.
As a child.
What was little Mandy determined to do?
I was determined to be a performer, which is weird coming from my family because there's not an ounce of creativity. And my parents, my grandparents, no one was in the arts. My parents weren't particularly they weren't playing records for us as kids. All of it was something I sort of had to seek out on my own. But I very viscerally remember being a kid, being 6, and going to my first school play. It was a performance of Oklahoma, and I remember seeing the girl singing "Oh What a Beautiful Morning," the girl that played Lori, and the entire audience was captivated by her. And I remember that feeling of looking around me going, I want to do that. I want to make people feel that way.
Yeah.
And so from then on, I was determined to figure out how to find myself on stage. And I didn't know quite how to go about doing that. So I do remember that I grew up in Orlando, and the Orlando Sentinel had an audition hotline in the newspaper, the number that you could call every Friday or something to find out what the upcoming auditions were, at local community theater around town. And so I had it in my head that I was gonna figure out how to do that, and my sweet parents were kind enough to sort of carpool me around to all of these different places around town to audition for these plays. But that's kind of how I got started. I had to be determined in and of myself to sort of see my path and see my lane, I guess, in that sense.
Well, that determination served you well, because next we're going to move into what you call your pop princess era.
Yeah.
So this was from 8 to 16 years old.
Yes.
And this is when your music career really started.
It's when it kind of took off, yeah.
Yeah.
So, not to get too in the weeds, but
Please, let's get in the weeds. Let's play in the weeds.
That's what a fireside chat is, right? So I grew up in Orlando. I did a lot of theater. I also became obsessed with singing the national anthem after I saw. I know this is so random because now I don't want to touch the national anthem with a 10-foot pole. And it's there's a lot to unpack there. But I remember I saw a little girl my age sing at an Orlando Magic game, and I was like, what? A revelation went off in my head. I was I didn't know that was a possibility for me. So I sent in an audition tape, and lo and behold, I got chosen to sing the national anthem, and then I kind of started singing the national anthem at just any sports team that would have me around town. And that led to these two local producers hearing me sing the national anthem and approach me and my parents afterwards and ask if I wanted to record a demo, a music demo. And mind you, this was 1998, so pop music was just what we sort of knew during that time, what it eventually became. It wasn't quite there yet.
Yeah.
So I remember thinking Bette Midler, Madonna, I couldn't, there wasn't anything else tangible to sort of Britney Spears or something that hadn't quite percolated yet. So I ended up going to the studio to start to record this demo. Lo and behold, a man who worked for FedEx heard me sing, had a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend. It was this crazy litany of people that he managed to get my demo here to New York City, to the head of A&R at Epic Records. Somehow this man heard something he liked. He flew to Orlando. I auditioned for him and signed a record deal when I was 15. So all of that to say, I was quickly sort of thrust into this adult world and thrust into this like thriving pop community and scene, and was given that label of pop princess, which again, like on its face value, none of these labels are inherently wrong. Like that was certainly a part of who I was, but I think it's when you kind of like boil it down and culture or society or something like forces you to just identify by that singular like idea.
That's it. Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
It's when they reduce us down to one thing.
To one thing. Yeah. And I remember like from that very early age, even till today, like I'm still asked, so do you consider yourself an actor or a singer? And it's like, well, why in the world can I not be both? Can I be all of those things? Like that's ridiculous to have to make that choice. And you know, on any given day, I have like a different answer. Like, oh, well, I'm, you know, on tour, so I'm the musician today, or I'm on set, so I'm the actor today. But it's like we all contain multitudes. We all should be allowed the opportunity and the breath to be as many things as we want, which is why I'm so excited to be here today and talking about this campaign and helping transmit that message in the world. But I think also when it becomes problematic, like in that particular instance, like the idea of pop princess had so much wrapped up in it, like this sense of perfectionism that I think I didn't have to like fight against by any means. It did go in line with, I think, who I was. I was 15, for goodness sake, you know what I mean? Like I was still sort of becoming a young woman and coming into my own, but it did instill this sense of like, oh, do I have to be perfect? Do I have to present myself to the world in a specific way? Do I have to look a certain way? Do I have to answer questions a certain way? Like all of that was kind of wrapped up in that label, and I think that was something I had to mitigate as time went on.
Do you think you're still attached to that perfectionism in any way?
Oh, for sure.
How does it come out?
I think it like manifests itself in kind of insidious ways sometimes. I think, if anything, becoming a parent has helped me shed a lot of that sense of perfectionism. I mean, we were just talking about our boys backstage. I think I'm a better advocate for myself now. I think I'm better at saying no. I think I'm better at not like contorting myself down to minimize myself in some way because it might be easier for other people, but it's taken time, and I'm 40. Like it's taken its time for me to like sort of get to this chapter of my life where I feel comfortable with that. But I also recognize like those little pieces that were the label that was like thrust upon me at a young age is like I still carry pieces of that around with me, and that's okay. It is a part of who I am.
Yeah, and not all of it is bad either. Look,
not all
perfectionism, even when it's done in moderation or in balance, it can serve you well. You know, it can bring this attention to detail to the work that you're doing now.
Yes, it makes me feel present. It makes me want to show up and be like the best version of myself.
Yeah.
When it takes that turn and you're putting too much pressure on yourself, like that, obviously that's when it's problematic. Yeah.
I want to talk to you a little bit more about the pressure that you faced in this season and the one that follows right after. So from 16 to 24 years old, you chose the label Girl Next Door.
Yeah.
And this was Walk to Remember days, right?
Yeah, just after that, yes.
So I was curious about the definition of a girl next door because it's this trope that we hear all the time.
Yeah.
But I don't know that we really understand what it means, right? So I looked it up. It typically represents a young woman who's wholesome, approachable, down to earth, a good girl.
Okay.
That's a lot of pressure.
Again, yeah, it's more of the pressure, right?
What kind of pressure comes with being labeled as the girl next door?
Well, I mean, again, I think it like fits in that same mold of pop princess where you're like, I have to sort of present myself in a certain fashion. And I also feel, from a professional standpoint, what I kept coming up against, and still do to a certain respect even today, is like people only seeing you in one light.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I can play a serial killer. I can play a cult leader. I can, like, I can do
I would be in your cult, by the way. I would totally be in your cult.
Thank you. I am more than what meets the eye. Like, thank you. I'm so flattered that you would see me in that light and consider me and use that as a descriptor. Like, that's all fine and wonderful. But again, it's like, it's when it pigeonholes you and it's limiting that it's so frustrating for people to like give you the chance or the world writ large to be able to see you as something just outside of that singular identity.
So what do you do to break free of these labels that have been assigned to you? Like, do you take bigger swings as an artist? How do you combat it?
Sure, and you recognize that like so much of that is out of your control.
Yeah.
I'm gonna stay in my lane. I'm gonna keep making the choices that I've made. I'm gonna check in with my gut, do things that I'm passionate about. I'm gonna push myself. And I was saying earlier today, it's like, I'm not in control. If the world is gonna eventually catch up to me, that's great, but like, I'm gonna keep, doing what I need to do for myself.
What I also think is really interesting about this trope, girl next door, is that comparison is built in. Because she's obviously in the frame next to a boy next door, another girl down the street.
Yes.
Comparison is such a huge part of this conversation around labels. When did you start to feel like yourself in the public eye?
I feel really grateful that I was always given the space and like the latitude to be me. Like really lucky when I look at other examples of other young people in the public eye that sort of were my contemporaries and even people after me and stuff. There wasn't the advent of social media and like all of the pressure that sort of comes along with that, but I didn't have like a record label that was necessarily directing me like, this is who you need to be, this is the way you need to answer questions. Like, if anything, it was a pressure that I kind of like put on myself from the labels that were sort of thrust on me. But so in this sense that I still was given a little bit of the freedom to kind of make my own choices, that was really nice. But again, I don't think I really started to feel like inherently comfortable in my skin. I'd say until like my 30s, where I was like, okay, I just don't care as much anymore. Like I've lived enough life. I've like gone with the ebbs and flows of career ups and downs and personal ups and downs and everything, all of this sort of turbulence that comes along with that. And I'm okay with where I am.
Well, I was just talking to a girlfriend of mine who's younger, and she feels like in her circle of friends, there's this arbitrary standard of like, you have to have everything done by 30. And I just want all the girls in their 20s to know, like, the 30s are great.
The 30s
are lit.
Best.
You don't have to have everything done by 30. You don't have to have your life figured out. It just keeps getting better.
Or 40. Or like, no, I mean, we're all, I just turned 40 and I'm like, bring it on, bring on aging, bring on, like, I feel so much more. I'm not physically comfortable right now because I'm 7 months pregnant, but I'd say I'm the most comfortable in my skin that I have been at any point in my life. And it's like, it's just because there's no substitute for time and the wisdom and the clarity that comes along with like age. Yeah. And so I'm 30s were the best, 40s feel even better, so. You guys all have so much to look forward to.
Yes, we do. Okay, so Mandy, after you turned 24, you describe yourself as versatile in this chapter between 24 to 32 years old. How were you flexing your versatility at that stage? What was happening in your life then?
I was trying different things creatively, professionally. I also like sort of really took a concerted step back for the first time, I feel like, in my professional life since I started.
How did that feel?
It felt good at the time. In retrospect, it maybe wasn't for the right reasons because it wasn't, I was trying to attend to a personal life that maybe didn't, wasn't as fruitful as I hoped it would be. Yeah. But I'm still proud of myself for like making that choice and honoring what I felt like was right at the time to do. Yeah. And I just, again, I feel like I was fluctuating and kind of getting into that like next juncture of my life where I was starting to feel more comfortable advocating for myself.
Sometimes you have to completely take a step back in order to move forward.
Oh yeah.
I'm sure that was
I definitely did. Yes.
I'm sure that was a time of growth and clarity for you.
It was.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yes. I don't begrudge it at all.
Okay, so next we're going to get into your 30s, and you say that this was your comeback queen era.
Yes.
You introduced the world to Rebecca Pearson during that time, your iconic This Is Us character.
Yeah.
What was the most victorious part of this chapter for you?
I think there's like, it's such a rare thing in life and professionally speaking to like have all of the stars align and feel like something is creatively as fruitful and meaningful to you as it seems to like resonate with others out there that are also sort of absorbing it and watching it and taking it in. Like, it's such a rare thing. It happens maybe once in a career if you're super lucky. So that felt like the most fruitful. And I think because I was in my 30s and I had been doing this for so long and I had crested and fallen and kind of just ridden the crazy waters of a really turbulent like industry, fickle industry, I was able to really be present and appreciate it and try to impart on all kinds of other like young people specifically. I remember like Milo and I would often like try to pull our kids aside, the young actors playing our children, and like appreciate this moment. Like let this, I know it won't mean what it means to us necessarily because you've never been in these shoes before. This is your first job, let's say, but like this never happens. Like this is so special. And like really take stock of like everything that's happening and how everything is unfolding, because it's never going to quite feel like this again. And it's true. Like I've never had a job that that meant quite as much as that one. But I think because I had all of the other life experience to back it up, I was able to like really appreciate the ride. I can't look back and say like, oh man, it happened so quickly and it took me by surprise. It's like, yes, I guess, sure, it took all of us by surprise, but I was able to like really appreciate it while it was unfolding.
We often hear about the comeback, but we don't often hear about the waiting before the comeback.
There was a lot of waiting.
Is there a specific moment from the waiting period that really tested your faith?
Yeah, I was in the midst of this like very tumultuous divorce. I felt like I couldn't get any traction in what had always felt like a little bit of an easier lift in my life. Like, I just felt like it wasn't working anymore. And
what wasn't working?
Me. Like, I was like, there's something, like the light has been extinguished. Like like what used to be so tangible to me just feels out of reach now. Like, I feel often we have to give ourselves permission as creative people to like, do what we love to do, but we also have to wait sometimes in a weird way for permission from others, right?
Yeah.
To give us an opportunity that will sort of open the door to the next thing. And I just felt like I was hitting brick wall after brick wall after brick wall, and things weren't coming to fruition. And this was a couple years, 4 or 5 years of just feeling like maybe the universe is trying to tell me that I should be grateful for what I experienced and how lucky I was, and that I got to live any of this incredible wild dream, and to just chalk it up to that and figure out what's next. Like pivot, move on to something else entirely. Maybe it was going back to school. Maybe I always loved journalism. Like maybe I can go back and study that. Maybe I can move back to Florida where I grew up. Like I just knew that something had to shift because it just wasn't working.
Yeah.
And I remember this particular project, like I had made a big move professionally, and I was working with new people and had new people in my corner, and we all had like a game plan of like, okay, this is how we're gonna attack things if I'm really gonna stay in this industry. And then I got this script for the untitled Dan Fogelman project, which ended up becoming This Is Us. And it was on NBC, and it was like all these things that we talked about, like kind of turning away from and trying something new. I was like, no, I just auditioned for all of these kinds of projects and nothing happened. I didn't get cast or they didn't move forward. So like, why are we like revisiting the same thing again? And lo and behold, then it ended up like that patience paid off because it ended up becoming what it became. But there was like a 4 or 5 year period there where I really truly was like, I think I'm ready to pack it in. And like with gratitude, not like sort of with my tail between my legs, just like, I have to like listen to the universe because something is clearly not working anymore.
So what kept you going?
My real love for it. I was like, well, what else am I gonna do? I don't know if I don't know if I'm meant to do anything else. So it was a real test in my own belief in myself and faith that like that was gonna be enough to get me through, you know?
You mentioned earlier that nothing clarifies your perspective or gives you fresh perspective like motherhood.
Yeah.
And that is so true for me as well. I can so relate to that. And that's the title that you've assigned to yourself today, the label that you've assigned to yourself today.
Yeah.
How has this title reconnected you with that passionate, determined little girl that we spoke about earlier?
I feel like everything has been renewed, like since becoming a parent. Like everything has come into focus in an entirely new way on like a cellular level. I feel like I want to be the best version of myself for my kids. I want to model that for them, all of it. Like it feels so entirely wholly different. But also like I love that I can continue being all of those things.
Yes.
Like I'm in a very, very fortunate position and privileged position to have gone back to work very quickly after both of my boys. One of which was by choice, the other was, it was my job and I had to jump back in there. But I love that, recognizing like that professional side really fills my cup.
Yeah.
And having that label of actor or director or producer, like artist, like that fills my cup in a very, very different way than parenthood does. And I don't feel bad about that. I don't apologize. And I feel really grateful that I can model that for my kids. Like one day I can show them it's important to like still tap into the things that make you you and are part of your identity and things that you're passionate about. Like you can, I mean, it's what we're talking about today. It's like you can be all of those things. Yeah, we're gonna be better versions of it at different junctures. Like we can't be all things all the time. But I feel very, very grateful to have been in the position and continue to be in the position where I can try a little bit of all of those things and be a little bit of all those things to show my kids one day.
I think motherhood should be all about like integrating all the parts of yourself and revealing that to your children. Like they need to see all dimensions of us. Are there any, when you think about all the labels that we explored today, are there any past versions of Mandy that you want to have a conversation with? And what does she need to hear?
Oh man, I think all of the younger versions of myself, just to see like where she ends up. And that it gets, not that it gets better, but like it continues being good and like patience and honoring yourself and checking in with yourself and recognizing like you don't have to define yourself in any one singular way is gonna serve you the best, like moving forward. Yeah. I hope she would be proud of where I am, you know?
Yes.
Aww.
Yes.
Thanks.
So sweet. Well, you brought me to the perfect close for our conversation. We're all claiming our and today, right?
Yes.
So I'd love to ask you, in addition to the label of mother, how do you define this stage in your life and career? What's an and that you're claiming either right now or in the next year or so?
Well, I'm going to be a mother of 3 soon, so that's definitely a new overwhelming and.
That's a big and.
That's a big and. I'm a new podcaster. That's a new and. I cannot wait for this to pop this baby out and like get back on a mountain. I love hiking. I like want to reclaim that and.
Yes.
That's something that I've had to table, like a side of myself I've had to table for a little bit.
Yeah.
But I'm also like, I'm so excited and open to like the evolution of what those future ands that I can't even see right now are gonna be.
The unknown.
What about you? What's an and you're most excited about that you've just added?
You know what, Mandy? I wasn't planning on answering this question.
Come on!
I was just asking.
On the spot.
I was just asking the questions. I'm gonna claim an unknown and. I like the mystery of the and.
Yeah.
You know, like I can feel that there's a future and right there within my grasp.
Yeah, we don't know what it is quite yet, but we're open to whatever the wind is gonna blow in our direction.
Exactly. I'm excited to discover it. Mandy, thank you so much for just being so honest and open. That's not easy to do. You like shared your whole life story with us. Thank you.
I knew I was in a safe crowd, in a safe space. Thank you guys. This was so much fun.
Yes. Thank you so much,
Simone.
Mandy, for this candid, beautiful conversation and for inspiring all of us to express our fullest selves. And thank you to everyone for tuning in.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.